Joseph tempted. Reading through the book of Genesis, chapter 39, verse 6, the Bible reads, "Now Joseph was well built and handsome. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, 'Come to bed with me.' The Bible tells us that when Joseph was working for Potiphar, this great Egyptian officer, government official, he gave him everything he owned and said, 'Run it, manage it.' And the Bible tells us that Potiphar was a married man to this lady who desired Joseph. She wanted to sleep with Joseph. And the Bible tells us that Joseph said no. He said, 'No, there's no way. I fear God. I fear God. I fear God. Even though your husband might not be around, even though nobody will know about it, I fear God.' The Bible tells us that day after day, Potiphar's wife went to Joseph and tried to persuade him, saying, 'I own everything here. I can make you earn more wealth, etc., etc.' But Joseph still said no. Joseph resisted the temptation. In life, you and I will go through temptations. We'll go through many temptations. These might include sexual temptations, financial temptations. These would include temptations of exploding in anger, rage against somebody, etc., etc. But the bottom line is we should stand firm like Joseph and fear God. We should stand firm like Joseph and resist temptation. Joseph said no to sexual temptation. Sexual temptation is one of the strongest temptations that you and I will go through in life. And Joseph was wise enough to resist it. He understood that once he fell into the sexual temptation, it will be addictive. He won't stop at the first attempt. He will do it again and again and again and again until it ruins him. I encourage you to resist sexual temptation. Secondly, Joseph understood that if he sinned, he will be sinning against the Lord. Sexual temptation is sin before the Lord. The Bible tells us that one should not have sex with any person except his wife or a person's husband. So because of that reason, I encourage you to live a sexually pure life. Wait until marriage. Joseph understood that there are sexual transmitted diseases. In our day, there is HIV/AIDS. Africa, Southern Africa, is known to be one of the highly rated, most infectious places with HIV/AIDS. Because of that reason, I encourage you to live a sexually pure life. Don't entertain sexual relationships in the name of having fun, because it will ruin your life. It will ruin your destiny. Wait, live a holy life. Please the Lord. It pays in every way. The other thing I want to point out about sexual temptation is that it does not end there. It has consequences that include soul ties. The Bible in the book of Corinthians tells us that, do you not know that he who sleeps with a prostitute becomes one with her? In other words, whenever a person sleeps with another person, they become one, not only in body, but their soul mingles. So there are soul ties. Secondly, demons are transmitted through sexual activities. So because of that reason, avoid it. Live a holy life. Live a life that is pleasing to the Lord. But once a person has fallen into sexual temptation, how do you get out of it? How do you break free from it? Number one, confess your sins to the Lord. If you are married, confess your sins to your spouse. Confess and say, Lord, I'm sorry. This is what I did. Secondly, if you are not married, I encourage you to get married. Don't run away from responsibility. If the girl is pregnant, say, I am responsible, and marry her. Live up to it. Take responsibility and get married. Get married and do things the right way. Thirdly, avoid situations that would lead you to fall. Avoid in the same room with the opposite sex. Even when you're having prayers, avoid it. And lastly, seek counsel. Seek counsel. Seek counsel from elderly, wise, mature people who will be able to hold you by the hand so that you come out of it. God is calling you for greatness, but the enemy wants to hinder that great destiny. Can you imagine what would have happened to Joseph if he had fallen into this sexual trap? He would have ruined his destiny and probably lost the opportunities of even becoming the prime minister of Egypt. I encourage you to get out of that temptation. Live a holy life so that God can fulfill the great plans that he has for you.